I'm sorry that you're not able to come in to visit in person, but I hope you enjoy this video that the kids sort of helped me make. First, we need to talk about some Fox Hill basics. This will be the same information that all of the teachers here will be sharing. Students can enter the classroom at 8:15 and are tardy at 8:30. The start times for late days are 8:50 and then they're late at 9 o'clock. You should call the office if your student is going to be absent. I also really appreciate it if you tell me, and then I can mark it that way. Oftentimes, you telling me gets it done a little bit faster. The only thing is, if I'm not here and you only tell me, that can be a problem sometimes. So you always want to make sure that you try to tell both of us. And if you only have time to make the one phone call, then I would definitely choose the office over me. We are able to have treats like birthday treats this year. You need to make sure that if you send those in, they're individually wrapped and they're store bought. We're not allowed to do homemade items. I normally do birthday celebrations at lunchtime. So if you're planning to drop them off, if you could drop them off prior to that lunchtime, which is normally 11:40, I would appreciate that. If we're going to be celebrating other things, I'll let you know and you can send things in for that. They always need to be store bought and individually portioned. So, for example, you couldn't send in a whole bag of chips for me to portion out. Cupcakes are fine, but like a cookie cake would not work. I always really appreciate it if you give me a heads up before you send stuff in so that I can plan the day around it. Otherwise, sometimes I forget and then I feel pretty terrible after that. Also, when we do eat, one of the reasons why we do it in the cafeteria is because they've got their lunch seats, and that's part of the COVID protocol, and it just makes it easier for me. So, most of our treats will be done during lunch this year. So, as with everything else this school year, things are changing every day with the new COVID protocols. Right now, if you want to visit, you have to arrange it ahead of time and you do have to have your ID. Typically, if you're going to be a volunteer, you would have to have the background check completed before you were coming for that. So, if you're interested in being a volunteer, we can try to work something out. It's just, I know that we're not doing a lot of that right now. When you come to pick up your kids, or if you're sending someone to pick up your kids, you want to make sure that you have your ID with you and that the person that you're sending to pick them up is listed on your child's Skyward. And you can settle that with either Amelia or Deanna in the office. Otherwise, they won't let your child go home with them. You're not allowed to have lunch or recess with the kids this year due to COVID. Actually, any year you're not allowed to have recess with them. If you're taking your student out for an appointment, if you could let me know if they're going to come back and let me know if they've had lunch or they're going to eat lunch with you, that would be great. That way I can make sure that they get fed that day. If you're going to be having transportation changes, you have to make those by 2 o'clock. I know the office tries to be a stickler on that, but things happen. Going through the office is a good idea just because if I'm absent and you email me, I might not get the message, and then your child might get put on the bus when you are actually coming to get them. So please make sure that you do that. I definitely appreciate when you let me know. And when you let me know, I tell the office. It's just that I'm always concerned that if I'm not here, no one would find out. As a matter of fact, this year my prep is first thing in the morning, whereas last year it was at the end of the day. So it's much more difficult for me to check messages after around 11:30, 12 o'clock. So definitely let the office know so that we can make sure that your student goes where he or she needs to. If you're picking your child up early, I do my best to have them ready to go so that when you do get to school, they come down as soon as possible. But honestly, I'm really not sure sometimes what takes them so long after I tell them to go down there because sometimes they're already packed up. Nonetheless, if you let me know ahead of time, I do try to have them packed up and ready to go. We're not allowed to send them down to the office just to wait. So when you get here, you will have to wait for them to come from the classroom. Early release days, those are usually the fourth Thursday of the month, and the kids get out at 2:15. And last time I know, car riders started dismissing at 2, and that might change, but that's the way it's been in the past. And then we've got our scheduled e-learning day on November 2nd, which we did prior to last year, where we kind of practice all those at-home learning things. And you'll get information about that when the time comes. The district just wanted to make sure that you planned ahead for that day, that your students would be home on November 2nd. I know the kids get really tired of hearing me talk about safety precautions, but definitely want to be trying to keep everybody as safe as possible this year. Masks are required for everyone. They are allowed to take them off at recess when they're playing. I've told the kids that if you know that your parents don't want you to take it off, then you shouldn't take it off. So that's something that you want to communicate with your student. The students have been really good about it. I can tell which parents have asked their kids to leave them on. And then when we get back in line, they put them on. I don't let them take them off if all they're doing is sitting and talking. And we've talked about that as a class. As far as recess goes, it's the same as last year where each class stays together at class and we don't mingle with the other kids. So each day of the week is a different spot on the playground. Lunch groups are a little bit smaller. Last year, I know they sat two to a table in the cafeteria. Our class is still in the cafeteria this year, but there are 4 or 5 kids sitting with them just from our class. So again, it's just our class. But the normally you would have 16 or 18 kids at a table, and now there are 4 or 5. So that's different. We try to clean the desks at the end of every day as a class. Thank you for sending in the wipes, and you can always continue to send in wipes if you see them on sale or if you're just feeling like we need to be cleaner. Feel free to send those in. I hate to waste all that plastic container, but it's just really helpful to do that with that. And I know it helps me a lot. Hand sanitizer and washing the hands, we do that at various intervals throughout the day, and the kids have become really good about trying to wash their hands after they do certain things. And then in our room, we're still not grouped. The desks still aren't grouped, and I still have them faced the same way. It makes it hard to walk in here, but I feel like the physical space in between the desk, even though it's small, it's a visual reminder to the kids that they're not supposed to be touching or talking or hanging in each other's space. So for language arts this year, we're still using the Lucy Calkins reading and Lucy Calkins writing program. And if you ever want any more information about that, I'm happy to send you information. Basically, we go through units and there's a lot of jotting and practicing and writing and reading, and it's more authentic than quizzes and things like that. We still have our book clubs, what the kids really like. The book clubs are meeting Monday, Wednesday, Friday right now. Um, and they get to choose the roles they want to take on during their book talks. And so far, it's been going really well. I do grade them mostly on participation for that. So each week they get 5 points a day for making sure that they did their job. And if they do their job, they get 5 points. And if they don't do their job, then they lose the 5 points. Um, of course, if you're absent, that flies out the window. The groups are flexible. Right now, they're in a group that won't be their group for the whole year. I did base the groups off of their initial NWEA scores. Same thing with writing. We have Writers Workshop this year, which is exciting, and students are grouped based on their scores on other assessments and things like that. They do a grammar module each week, so every week they spend 2 days writing, 1 day talking with me, and 1 day peer editing and sharing with each other, so it works out pretty well. This year we'll do informative, narrative, and persuasive and kind of bounce back and forth. Vocab is pretty much the same this year. The routine where the lists last 2 weeks, but we do Greek and Latin prefixes as our words instead of the words that we were doing in the past. So a lot of good stuff happening in language arts this year. Math is sort of a work in progress this year. I'm trying to implement a better math workshop model. I feel like last year doing the math on Canvas was not productive in all the ways that it should be. So we've got some work to do with that. And also, that means that most of the math that we do will not be done on the computer. I feel like that wasn't a very good approach. It was just sort of the way that it needed to be for that year. But typically, we have math workshop where kids do work together. They do work alone. They do work with a small group. They do work with an adult. They play games. They do Dreambox. We do all sorts of different things. Currently, the way we're running it, students are doing really well on all of their assignments because they check in before they turn it in a lot of times, which sort of inflates the grades to make them higher A's and B's. And I'm absolutely okay with that as long as we're all on the same page, understanding that for the most part, most kids are not working alone. So I did make some comments on your midterm report so that you could get an idea for whether or not your student is in a small group every day, occasionally, or almost never. That way you understood if that grade reflected what your child did with help or without help. And you can ask me questions about that anytime you'd like. Sometimes I even send math home to redo because I feel like there wasn't enough time here and I didn't get to your student and I want to make it fair. We're supposed to be starting Springboard at the end of the month, the beginning of October. I've not used Springboard before, so I'm still learning all about that. Springboard is the sixth grade math program here in Washington Township, and we will follow the pacing that the other fifth grade Compass classes are following to the extent that it makes sense for us. If there are things that we need to slow down with, we will. Once we start the book, I'll make sure you get all of the information about the units and what we're covering and the order and those kinds of things. As far as the DMR goes, that was really useful last year, and I'm not finding it useful this year. So I don't want to just keep doing things because they're part of my routine or because they provide the structure that I like. So we're still kind of doing it for morning work, but we're not really going over it very often. I think I've decided that we're not going to do it. I'm not ready to say that I'm done with it completely, but I think we might be seeing the end of DMR. We also, like I said, the kids are doing the math stations, they're doing games, they're working with each other, they're working with an adult. And we're fortunate to have a full time Compass IA this year, and I have her during math. So that has been really useful. In fifth grade, our social studies focus is the United States. The standards sort of lean us towards the United States in terms of exploration and how we became a country and people who were here before we became a country and how that happened, all the way through around the Declaration of Independence through the American Revolutionary War. And we don't get too much past the Revolutionary War in terms of whole group activities, but then we'll learn about the government as it was and as it is. We'll learn about economics as it was and how it is. And then hopefully you've been looking at the states and capitals information that's gone home. The 50 states menus this year are really taking the place of the Hoosier hike that we did. It's something that the regular classes are not going to be doing at all. It's something that I think is good for students in terms of learning how to independently research, how to make choices about what you want to do for assignments. So there are a lot of good aspects to the 50 states menu. If you have questions about that, I'm happy to answer them and go over them after the video because I know that it's a large part of what we're kind of doing on the side. The states and capitals quizzes will be as scheduled that I already sent home that schedule, and they'll be regional. And then at the end of the year, we'll have another full all of 50 states and capitals. For science this year, we get to continue with those FOSS kits that come and go that are pretty cool. We started the year with Earth and Sun, and you've seen some of our fun stuff that we've done with shadows. And we've been working on the distance between the Earth and the Moon and how the Moon changes and all those kinds of things. We will kind of go back and forth between science and social studies as usual. The next science unit will be Mixtures and Solutions, which is a pretty cool unit that has more like chemistry science to it, where they get to mix things together and see what happens and look at reactions. And I think they will really like that one. And then later in the year, we'll work on living systems and do some more biology. But a lot of that is hands on, and we try to have fun. We try to hopefully this year work more in groups than we did. Once I set the groups for those, I keep them the same, and we have assigned spots in the room. And that's one of the things I'm trying to do to keep everybody safe, but still being able to work in a group. Something new this year is that in Washington Township, on the elementary school report card, there is no listening and speaking grade and there is no health grade. There's no formal curriculum for health. There hasn't been since I've been here, but we'll continue to talk about all the things that we talk about in morning meeting. And we know we've got the big human growth and development speech coming up next week that the kids are so looking forward to. But I do think it's important that even though that's not a formal curriculum, that we will still continue to do assignments. And if I choose to grade them, they'll go in the science under life sciences category. But there is no official grade for that anymore. It's always interesting to talk about homework versus classwork, and some of the kids will say that they never have any homework, and some of the kids will say that they always have homework, when in fact they're all kind of doing the same thing. It's true that I don't necessarily assign official paper every night, pass it out, and call it homework. That's not something that I tend to do. And the reason why is because they should be practicing their vocabulary words, they should be practicing their states and capitals, and most of them still have math facts to practice as well. They're also supposed to be reading for 20 minutes every night. Some of the kids are saying they read on the bus, and while that's fine, it's part of their homework. So if you totaled all of that up, that would be 40 to 60 minutes of work. You might be saying, "Well, we don't really need to do that," and that's okay. I understand that some of the kids are already mastering some of those things, but I would say not to shy away from having that time for them. They can do Dreambox at home. Some of the kids can do Lexia at home. They can read for longer. And when they read, we should be encouraging them to think while they're reading, not just to read for pleasure and be done. It should be more of an assigned read where they're reading and really thinking about the things that we're doing at school. The other thing is, a lot of times, particularly with math, I say, if you didn't finish it, I need you to take it home and finish it. And again, I know that bus ride home for some of the kids is awfully productive, but you might want to be checking with your kids and saying, did you have anything that you didn't finish at home today to work on at home today? Because sometimes the answer is yes, but they've already finished it. Um, and maybe they didn't do as good a job as they could have if they'd slowed down. So you might want to think about making that part of their routine. Also, if students are going to be doing their absolute best job on the 50 states menu, some work is going to have to be done at home. I could see their wheels turning when we were talking about it the other day, and a lot of students feel like they're going to be able to get it all done in their spare time here at school. I would encourage you to go through the menu with your kids and ask them what their plan is and how they plan to finish and what they plan to do. I gave them a pretty long lecture about quality of work for that. So, what I'm trying to explain to them is done isn't enough. It has to be your best work. That's the point of what we're trying to accomplish. So, I would definitely add 50 states, the menu part, into your homework routine. And maybe you only do it once a week, or maybe you do it a little bit each week, but there are 6 assignments over about 6 weeks. And I've tried to explain to the kids that spending 5 minutes on each assignment is not going to be sufficient. That's definitely something to take a look at with your student. I'm the first to admit that I often lose track of Class Dojo and points and that sort of thing. They always say, don't create a management system that you're not going to use. And that's kind of an issue with me for Class Dojo because we changed it this year as a school to going from negative points to neutral points. And in doing so, I'm kind of feeling like giving any points at all is not exactly useful in terms of changing their behavior. If it were going to change anybody's behavior, I would give points and neutral points all day long. But I didn't really see that as being effective. The Foxheads tend to work a little bit better for that. So I've been doing a good job this week about passing those out. And then Friday, they'll get to turn them in for prizes and things of that nature. I think I'm moving towards them understanding that sometimes we do things because they're the right thing to do and we're expected to do them, not because there's a prize. I'm also working on natural consequences. So if you do this bonehead thing, then this is the consequence that's going to happen to you. So that's kind of my role this year in trying to guide them to making better decisions. And as we learn and grow together, I think you'll see me using Foxheads more than Class Dojo. If I ever really have issues with your student, you'll hear from me. And you can always contact me and ask me if you want to know specifically things that are going on. But definitely when there's an issue, I'll let you know. And other than that, everybody's doing a pretty good job. If talking and being silly is our biggest problem, I think we're having a pretty good year. If your student is absent for any reason, you can always go to the Canvas page and click on the School from Home tab. And when you click on that, it takes you to a page. It's not a module like we were using last year, but it shows you what we're doing for the week. And I try to go in and change it if that's not what we do. One thing I've been working on the kids with this year is keeping a notebook for each subject. And I'd like to show you that those are located here. And what I've been doing is taking a picture of the page in the notebook that we create every day. And then at the end of the day, updating the notebook on Google Drive so that if your student is home for any reason, he or she can go in and get the page and copy it, or at least know what we did. So you can see here, these are the different things that we've been doing in math, and then those are the notes that we took. So if your student is home for the day or for several days and we're not going to be seeing them, this is a really good resource, and that's for all of the subjects. And so if I ever reference going to the notebook, this is what I'm talking about. It's on the school from home page, and then you have the different subject areas. And when you go to them, it takes you to a Google Drive, and then it takes you to a picture of the page that we did. I do tend to run about a day behind because the internet in this room on my phone isn't the best, and sometimes I can't get the pictures to send right away, and that's kind of the only way that I have to do it. So it can be sometimes a day behind, but that's where we're keeping the notes so students can see what we're doing in class. So if I ever reference the notebook page, that's what I'm talking about there. I think that's going to be really helpful for students, especially if you're just absent for one day. You'll know what you missed and you can easily rewrite that. Thanks for listening and watching this extremely informative video. I'm going to stick around and answer questions about whatever you have. And if you think of anything later on after this meeting, you can feel free to email me or Dojo me or Parent Square me. And I hope to see you soon. Thanks.